In this video, we are going to demonstrate the new Vixen Whirlpool Effect. The concept for this effect was captured back in 2016 by one of the Vixen developers. The inspiration for this effect is a real-life whirlpool, but since pixel matrices are often rectangular, this effect is going to model the whirlpool concept using rectangular whirls. In this video, we are going to be using an 84 by 42 pixel matrix to demonstrate the effect. Let's get started by adding the effect to the sequence timeline. The Whirlpool effect has a whirl mode setting. There are 3 whirlpool modes: continuous, concentric, and Meteor. In the remainder of this video, we will explore the behavior and settings of each mode, starting with the default of continuous whirls. The first setting we can change is the rotation of the whirl between clockwise and counterclockwise. The next setting we can change is the start location. The whirl can start from any of the 4 corners of the matrix. It defaults to the top left, but we can change it to the bottom left, the top right, and the bottom right. The next setting we are going to look at is the direction. The direction can be set to 3 values: in, out, and the combination of in and out. The default is moving in. We can switch it to moving out. Finally, the combination of moving in and then erasing back out. We can also select the reverse draw option, where the whirl starts out completely drawn and then is removed based on the direction setting. In this example, since the whirl is moving in reverse draw mode, it is erased moving out. The next 2 settings we are going to look at are the spacing and thickness. These settings are configured as a percentage of the display element. We can increase the thickness to get a wider whirl. The spacing can be both increased and decreased. If we set the spacing to 0, it will often fill the entire display element. We can now increase the spacing to get a less dense whirlpool. Here I've set the thickness to 4 pixels and the spacing to 2 pixels, which allows me to demo the next setting. 3D can be selected to draw the whirl with shading. The speed of the whirl is determined by the duration of the effect on the timeline, such that the whirlpool is complete at the end of the effect. The iteration setting can be used to repeat the whirl more than once in the same duration. So when I set it to an iteration of 2, you should see the whirl move faster. The next setting I want to demonstrate is the pause at end. This setting controls the number of frames at the end of the effect to show the completed whirlpool. The default is 5%, but if we increase it, we should see a longer pause. The next group of settings to talk about are the movement settings. These settings allow the whirlpool to only target a portion of the prop and then move that smaller drawing area around the display element. The next group of settings to discuss are the color options. There are 4 color options to choose from. A single color gradient. The gradient shown here slowly changes from red to white. The second color option is side colors, where each side of the whirl is a different color gradient. The third option is color rings, where each whirl of the whirlpool is a different color from the color collection. The last color option is color bands. With this option, the length of the bands is adjustable. The last setting in the effect is the brightness. Similar to other effects, this setting determines the intensity of the whirls. Let's configure the whirlpool to start out dim and ramp up to full intensity. We've covered all the settings applicable when the whirl mode is set to continuous whirls. There are two more whirl modes to look at. The next one we're going to cover is concentric whirls. With this mode, concentric rectangles fill the display element. It shares most of the same settings as the continuous whirls. The last whirl mode is Meteor. In this mode, a meteor follows the whirlpool path. The meteor shares all the same settings as the continuous whirl, with the exception of color. The meteor only supports a single color gradient. The gradient is used to draw the meteor. In this example, the tip of the meteor is white and the tail is red. There is one unique setting in Meteor mode. The length of the meteor tail can be adjusted. So let's make our meteor longer. Let's switch the whirl mode back to continuous. We skipped over discussing the grid panel settings. We can use these settings to add more than one whirlpool to the display element by dividing the matrix into rows and columns. First, I will divide the matrix into 3 columns. This enables a panel spacing setting that can be used to add blank space between the columns. Now let's add a second row. The settings under Whirl Configuration and Color apply to all the whirlpools in the grid panels. For example, let's change the spacing to 0. We can, however, select to configure each grid panel whirlpool individually. It can be confusing to figure out which whirlpool applies to each panel. Deselecting Enabled removes the whirlpool from the panel to quickly confirm you are editing the correct settings. As you can see, the grid panels start out at the bottom left of the display element. Let's change some of the grid panels from red and white to green and white. In this example, we have 2 rows and 2 columns. The start position and rotations of the whirls were configured individually such that they all start out in the center. This just demonstrates some of the interesting patterns that can be created when using individual configuration. Before we end this video, here's an example of using the panel settings with concentric whirls with a direction of in and out. We hope you found this effect visually interesting and find opportunities to use it in your shows. Thank you for supporting Vixen.